About a year ago, I decided I wanted to make a game. I knew nothing about programming, game engines, or game development, but here I am. I decided to learn Unreal Engine solely because some video games that I really enjoy were made in Unreal Engine, and I also plan on using the engine's blueprint system alongside C++ for the programming aspect of things. Fast forward a couple months, after binge studying a lot of C++ and the basics of Unreal, I thought I was prepared to jump into development. I figured it was probably best for me not to try and invent some industry-changing game mechanic, so I decided to stick with combining aspects from games that I already enjoy. Taking heavy inspiration from the Left 4 Dead franchise, roguelikes like The Binding of Isaac and Enter the Gungeon, and obviously Team Fortress 2, I came up with the idea for Safety First. Set in the pseudo-1960s, heavily influenced by the spy-fi genre, a small rescue squad of you and 2 to 5 other players fight hordes of various enemies and collect loot to upgrade your character in order to complete the objective. With the gameplay conceptualized, it was time to move on to the most important aspect of any character-based shooter, the characters. In any character-based game, like League of Legends, Team Fortress 2, or Apex Legends, my absolute favorite thing to do is picking a character based off of their abilities and doing stupid experiments with various items, upgrades, or playstyles. So in my game, I wanted to heavily emphasize player experimentation and gameplay. For those unfamiliar with Team Fortress 2, it is a multiplayer PvP-focused game centered around 9 selectable classes, each with unique skills and abilities. I won't get into the details about each one, but just know that I use these as a baseline for designing my game's character. I did not want to create, rig, and animate 9 different player character models, so in order to cut down on the amount of work that I had to do, I combined aspects of some of Team Fortress 2's classes together, while also looking for inspiration in other class-based games to fill the gaps. I feel like this decision to combine classes will also allow players a greater deal of customization, as players can decide which aspect of the character they might want to focus their build path on. For example, take this heavy weapons engineer-like character. A player can pick between building the character to be a walking behemoth, or having the sentries that they would have to upkeep, maybe a mix of both, or something in between. Or perhaps the player could choose to build the character in a completely different path than the character's intended purpose. With the characters out of the way, I began to focus on the meat of the gameplay, the weapons and movement. In most class-based games, loadouts are predefined, meaning that you cannot change your weapon or take other classes' weapons. In order to help push player experimentation, I wanted any character that the player picks to be able to use any weapon that they find. I wanted a large variety of quality weapons, so initially I thought to do an elemental system, where weapons would do extra damage or apply status effects based off their element, but I found that to be boring and a little played out. Instead, I came up with the idea of a weapon size system, where weapons could spawn in a variety of sizes ranging from small to large. This idea came to me when I imported the placeholder guns into Unreal at the wrong size, but my friends loved the idea of oversized weapons. Smaller weapons would have larger magazine size and higher firing rates in exchange for lower damage. Larger weapons, on the other hand, would have higher damage in exchange for lower magazine size, lower firing speed, and higher recoil. The larger weapons would also give bigger characters something to do, as they might not be as mobile as smaller characters, but they can wield the giant guns with little to no drawbacks. This in theory would allow for players to even further customize their character, not only based on their weapon, but their weapon size. For example, a small rocket launcher would fire like a machine gun, releasing a stream of small explosives, while a large rocket launcher of the same type would fire a literal nuke towards the enemy. This would also give a level of silliness to add to the game's charm, and I feel it's a pretty unique mechanic. Alongside adding variety, the weapon size mechanic allows me to implement one of Team Fortress's most fun core mechanics on every character, rocket jumping. In many shooters, higher jumps can be achieved by shooting some type of explosive at the player's feet and jumping in order to gain a vertical boost. In Safety First, with the large weapon's recoils, players could simulate the mechanics of explosive jumping without needing to take damage from explosives every time, as health would be limited during game runs. Mobility was also a huge point of focus for me during development. In variety games between actions, just challenging myself to get from point A to point B as fast and fluidly as possible was one of the most enjoyable aspects of the game outside of the core gameplay. I took notes from games like Apex Legends and Hat in Time's mobility options, allowing players to wall climb, wall jump, and slide based off of momentum, hopefully making movement more enjoyable for the player. I do plan to add more character-specific methods of movement later down the line as well. With all the basic mechanics wrapped up, it's time for me to move on to implementing multiplayer, but that's for another episode. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.